What's up, everybody? This is Think Godly TV.
What's up, guys?
I'm
What's up,
here
guys?
with the one and only Mauricio Shakuya.
Humble. I'm here with Jay Watt. So I'm happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah, Think Godly. Get you on March already, Yeah. Good
Get your merch, for real. Get your merch.
Yeah,
Get your
yeah.
merch. On the website, whenever, like on the page, Instagram, whatever you can find it on, thinkgodlyproductions.com.
Yes, sir.
So, we're just gonna have a good conversation today. So, I know we was talking about little stuff before this,
Right.
but what do you think God is saying to you right now in this season?
Like, I feel like in this season, it's a season where I'm in that walking out your salvation season. As far as there is a realm, there is somewhere that God want to take us, and then there are some luggages that cannot go there. It's like when you're taking a flight, some luggages are too heavy. So I think this is a season where God has been stripping off all the luggages. It's interesting because it's like that season where it's there, like it's the beginning of the fulfillment of the promises of God. Now it's just like, it's like, before you fly, and today I'm flying, I'm going, let's say you want to relocate and go to France or wherever you want to stay. When you are moving to that country, you're not going to take all your old clothes with you. Right. So it's like it's that season where we're stepping into a new season, a new dimension. Started with it to start doing more of God's work, and then it's like, okay, as we're going there, pick the clothes that you're going with. All the clothes, all the things that we don't need, we leaving that behind. So that's the season, about to take off.
Dang,
yeah,
that's crazy, man.
Yeah,
it's about to be 2024, and it feels like it just won't end. Like this year is like.
Right.
God is like, nah, I can't send you into like the new year with all this baggage, with all these things that's holding you back. So it's interesting that you say that, talking about promises and just doing things like that. It's like, I think I was talking about this like not too long ago about like, you're seeing like everybody receive their promise, right? And then you're like, yo, why isn't this happening for me? And then God will just like reveal something like that weight or that luggage that you were carrying. Then you'd be like, dang, like I realized that was like probably one thing that I needed to get rid of in order to shift me into like that new reality.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's one of those where when you are attentive to what God is telling you, like you're able to discern what's happening amongst you or what's happening in the community you are in your life for you to let go. It's like in the Bible when like we used to that's the promise God gave us, like glory to glory, and in the Bible when you look at Joshua's goal was for him to conquer the promised land for God, and they had started conquering and then they were winning their victories. Then they get to that place, I think it's called AI. That's what it's called, I don't know how to say. But they get there and they lose. Now it's like, God, that's not a promise that you made to me. And then later on, Joshua turned out to find out that there were things that were, there were some plunders that God had asked them not to take, that they took during their conquest into the gathering of the Israelites. And God had to kill that person. They had to get rid of that before they can keep on going. So it's like when you really are attentive to God, there are some promises, there are certain things that God promised us. And you really like, you can feel it, like in your spirit, you can feel it. I feel like this is time. I feel like, I gotta go. God, what is it that I need to do? And you have to remove those unconsecrated elements in the midst. But what are you feeling? What do you feel like this season is for you?
Man, that was good, man. I'm still shook because Joshua's like the perfect example right now. It's like they could not go into the promised land. like he still had the promise. You know, he still like God was like, wherever you go, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, like I got you, just like you were with Moses. But it's like when they started experiencing like issues and they couldn't shift, they're like, yo, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like what's happening? And then just to find out like there was like things I think like that they carried with them. You know, so I like how you tied that in.
Yeah.
For real, like that's really good.
Yeah, man.
What'd you say? What'd you ask me?
I ask you, what do you feel like it's your season? What do you feel like for this season for you?
Definitely that season of transition.
Uh-huh.
You know, I also mentioned that on my page not too long ago about transitioning and like it just feels like week after week there's like little transitionings happening. It's like, and then like it's like right in your face of like the promise or like whatever God is trying to like shift me or take me into. It's like you don't know like what's being prepared or like how it's gonna look or like how you're gonna even end up in that position, but then it just kind of happens.
Yeah. And
it's like, honestly, transitions can be this is probably the worst word to use, but traumatic.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yo, but these transitions is like, it feels heavy.
Yeah.
Because it's like, dang, like, you know, I didn't expect it to happen. Right. You know, there's so much delay or, you know, you just can't see that it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. And It's just, it feels traumatic because it just feels like that weight of having to, once you get shifted, like, you have to perform in that space.
Right.
You know? And I feel like that's another element to look into when you're transitioning or like when you're being led into the promise. It's like, and when you're stripping these weights, like you still gotta like heal and process that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't process that, it's like it's empty there. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I like what you said about being traumatic. That's the word, trauma. You know, and and I think, you know, God knows everything, and eventually, like even science, God created science before we even discovered science.
Yeah.
And in that aspect, God knew that there are some, it's those traumatic events that stays the longer in your memory. You know, it's like, you know, like those events stay the longer. And you even see with Jacob and God, when Jacob is fighting the angel all night, he broke his hip.
Yeah.
And then that's a living on trauma. It's like, you know, every day Jacob lived, he remembered that, you know, like God broke my hip, you know, and I think that serves as a testimony where it's like,
he broke his hip but stepped into the promise.
Exactly. God is like, you know, this allows you that every time that you're walking, you know, you as you're limping, you can remember that, you know what, God did this to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's traumatic. It's like God, for reasons that are sovereign to him, you know, he waits like that very last moment when you're like, God, you know, I don't know, I can't do this anymore. Like, what's happening? And then I think it just allows us to identify with people even later on.
Yeah.
You know, it's like later on when you meet somebody and that person is also experiencing transition, it's much easier for you to relate to them. It's much easier for you to go ahead and be like, hey, you know, man, I've been there, you know. Yeah. Like, I know the days, you know, well, you wake up every morning, you're like, God, yo, is this ever going to happen? Yeah. So, yeah, but I'm excited because there's a promise that he fulfills everything he says, so.
You know, what I just felt like is like what Jacob had to experience and what Joshua had to experience is like they didn't just walk into their promise. They fought.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, that was just like, that just hit me right now. It's like, you got to fight for your promise. Like, you have to fight for what God is telling you. You have to fight for what the promise that God has for you. Like, you don't just fall into it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to fight through it.
Yeah.
And of course, there's going to be things all around you trying to influence or tell you that that's not going to happen. This is not for you. This is not, you know, this will never happen.
Right.
And these are like the things that you have to fight through to obtain that promise. Yeah. Even though it's there. It's already prepared. It's already there. But it's like, nah, I ain't letting go until you bless me.
That's true.
You know, I ain't going forward until like God, you gotta be with me.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like that constant like I'm not moving forward unless you do something. You know, unless you do something to me too.
That's true. That's true. That's true. That's so good because he has to do something internally to you as well. And as far as the fights, you know, you see, even though what I often think about is people go through different battles that at face value can be different from one another,
Yeah.
but the impact of the trauma is still the same level.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like somebody, perhaps, you know, you even think about billionaires, whatever. Like a billionaire, a trauma cannot be the lack of money, but the lack of peace. But you know, like somebody, like somebody that has no money, a poor man's trauma
Yeah.
is not. He's got peace, but the trauma is money. But yet that trauma is the same, and that really comes back to even when you think about different battles. It's like somebody like Abraham. God gave him a promise that he was supposed to have a son, and then he's old, and then his combat is the thought. It's like the thoughts keep hitting him, and then he's got to fight.
Yeah,
And you see some people like the apostles, they got beat up. Paul supposedly got killed. Then people thought he was killed when they beat him up, and then he got up.
Yep.
And then that's the trauma that he went to. And that really just shows how, you know, between the heavens of God and the abode of man, there's something in the middle.
Wow.
And then there's that middle that really stands in the way. And it's like, you know what, God has given us dominions over the earth, but there's an enemy out there that's really trying to prevent you from getting it. And it's when you discover the truth, when you discover those baggages, luggages, clothes that you're supposed to leave before you go to the next level, it's just like a clear highway.
So what if it's a mindset?
Yeah.
A mindset thing. It's like, I also like what you said, you know, about like the trauma, like in Abraham. Like when I think about the story of Abraham.
Yeah.
And it keep like everything ties in to where it's like he still had the promise, but he still had to. There was something God wanted to still pull out of him.
Yeah.
Like he still had to fight for the promise.
Yeah.
So it's like his son, his promise is right there, it's right in front of him. But he still had to get through that test or that trial that God put him through, like to prove, I guess, his faith or whatever. But after that, he shifted completely.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring that, because I just feel like one thing that God just dropped in my spirit is it's like the trauma that you go to is eventually so that later on people can identify. Yeah. You can't be called the father of faith if you didn't have to go through a situation that proved your faith.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Abraham's situation. He had to believe, yo, I'm 90. How am I, like my woman, I don't even know how old, like his wife was like 9. How is she going to give birth? And then he had to have that faith that, you know what, God is going to show himself faithful because he said it. So that we also, who come out of that, we are the sons of Abraham now because we, through the covenant of Jesus, so that, you know, we can identify with him. You know, our father believed at that age. So what is the promise that God gave me that I won't believe in? Wow. You know, it's like those promises are it's a legacy that we leave behind. It's like, you know, the battles that you fight allows. It's like I heard one time somebody said, it's like we go through stuff so that our ceiling can be our sons and daughters' floor.
Yeah.
You know.
Man, this is good.
Yeah.
This is good. I really like how you said that Abraham was the father of faith. And I don't know, it's like God just keep dropping things, like as we go. But Abraham had to prove faith multiple times.
Yeah.
The first thing was when he had to believe God for the descendants, right?
Yeah.
So, and then like he had to wait years before Isaac was born.
Yeah.
Think about that. He was like, all right. So imagine the years before Isaac was born. He had to be like, you know, God said, God said, like, I'm going to have a son. God said, I'm going to have a son. And it was years he had to wait. And then God was like, now it's time.
Yeah.
For whatever he did in that time frame, like God was like, all right, now it's time for the son. And then the son came forward. and then it's like, all right, now kill your son. It's
Right.
Like, he's like,
got to prove his faith
I
again.
can't do this.
Yeah.
And then it's like, when after all of that, he still had to travel, still had to leave, still had to go different places, still had to like prove God over and over and over. It wasn't just one story, and then it's like, that is traumatic.
It is. It is. It's not trauma again. It's not trauma again. And Abraham's story is triumphal, but it's also kind of sad a little bit, because when you think about it, he settled for the counterfeit at one point when the promise took too long, and he ended up having a kid with his servant or his wife's servant, and that was a counterfeit. And then that also speaks of the importance of patience when we're waiting for the promises of God, where it's like before the enemy sees that you are about to step into that places of glory, he's bringing you something that's fake. Even with Jesus, Jesus is about to step into glory, and then the enemy comes give him the same thing that God had promised him already. Like, like God had promised Jesus a whole descendant since the beginning. Even Isaiah 53, I think, talks about it. Like when they talk about the Messiah, like he shall inherit the nations. And I think that's even Psalm, he shall inherit the nations. And you see, that was already his promise. Yeah. And as he's getting closer to his promise, the enemy, as he's about to start his ministry, the enemy comes and like, bow down to me, I will give you the kingdom of God. Yeah. It's mine already. What do you mean? Yeah. And then I think we spoke about it the other day too, where I really think it's like there is those promises that God has already given us, and then it's just like the enemy always trying to stand in the way, and the people, like, not to get too deep, but the people that end up, joining cults or doing all these things, thinking that the enemy is really giving them something, but he's not really giving them anything. It's everything that God already promised them. Then they're like, I'm not gonna stand on the way anymore. You can have it. Yeah. But in the midst of that, he's giving them death. It's like, it's like God had already prepared a cake for you, and then he's like, this is your cake, and boom, a drop of poison in it.
Man, I always realize that, like, when you're about to step into something, there's always something that's gonna be presented to you. And like, you have to like be able to discern the counterfeit. Yeah. Be able to discern the counterfeits in your life. Because like you can fall into like the counterfeit, and then that'll throw you into a cycle for a whole nother 10 years.
Yeah. That's true.
10 years.
That's true.
Like, the enemy knows like what we're longing for. Yeah. And desiring and stuff like that. So yeah. I like that.
Yeah, like beware of the counterfeit. Beware of the counterfeit. Yeah.
Yo, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm slaying for the night, the week. Yeah. I'm excited. Man, we have to like this is so good. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got to.
Yo, so stay tuned for a part 2.
Part 2.
We're gonna let you guys go. Stingali TV with Mauricio Shakuya.
Jay Watt, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, so
alright,
take care.
Part 2.